Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to make this bioluminescent flower inspired by Avatar movies, and I really hope you will enjoy this one, and if you do, please don't forget to leave the like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustration all the way to full character illustration and textured environment. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Now let's jump right into empty Blender file, and first thing we'll delete the light and the default cube. So let's just select them, press X and delete. And now we'll need to create a few flower petals. So let's press Shift A and we can start with the plane. Now let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and let's tab into the edit mode and press G then Y and move it up slightly, and let's press S then Y to scale it up on Y axis. And now let's press Ctrl R and create 3 cuts. You can increase the number of cuts with the mouse wheel, confirm with the left click and right click to release. And now we'll just change the shape, so let's select the pairs of these vertices and press S to scale them down, just like this. Okay, that should work nicely. And now we'll press Ctrl R and create few slices here as well. And now let's give this some shape. So first of all, let me select these two in the middle, and we can press O to enable proportional editing. Press G then Z and you can see the fall off circle right there, and you can increase the fall off with the mouse wheel. So let's just bring it up like this. And now we can press Ctrl R and create few more cuts on the sides there. And now we can select this vertex, hold Shift, select the other one, press G then Z and just reduce the fall off so we can bring these up. And on the sides here as well, and maybe some more here in the middle. And finally, let's press Ctrl R, create a cut right here. And right here we can select these two vertices, press G twice, hold Alt key and slide them out. And these two we can bring back. And now select these in the front, press G then Z and move them up like this. Now we can tab out and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier, and this is something we should have here. And if this is too narrow, you can always select these on the side and just scale them out a little bit. Just like that. And let's bring this down. So let's do it like this. Press A to select all, and let's rotate everything and bring it here so it sits nicely here on the origin point. Maybe not such an harsh angle, something like this. Okay, I think this will be enough. So let's go and add a solidify modifier, but make sure you move it above the subdivision, so you get the first solidify modifier and then subdivision. And now let's increase the solidify a little bit, right click and shade smooth. So this will be the first petal, and let's move it to the side. So press G then X and move it right here. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add another plane. Let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and now tab into the edit mode. Let's make this smaller, and don't forget to turn off proportional editing right here. Press G then Y, move it up, and now S then Y and scale it up like this. And let's move it even more. And now let's press Ctrl R, create 2 cuts right here, and let's scale this down, and in the front as well, and maybe these two. And now we can just extrude here a little bit, just like this. Now let's look from the side and we can enable X-ray view and just select these, and let's give this some angle, some tilt like that. And let's press Ctrl R to create a cut here in the middle. And now select this vertex, press G twice and hold Alt key to move it out like this. And let's select these two in the middle, press Ctrl B to bevel and increase number of cuts to 3. And now just press G twice to slide these vertices around, and we can select these two, press G then Z and move them down, and then Y maybe. Okay, now tab out, and again we'll add solidify here as well, maybe increase a little bit, and then we can add subdivision surface by pressing Ctrl 2. So we have like another petal or leaf, if you will. Let's move it closer here. Okay, let's move it to the side. And now the final one, that will be like the simple one. So let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, create a plane, and press tab into the edit mode, press G then Y and move it here, and press S then X and scale it down like this. And let's create a few cuts here as well. And now just scale it down, press E then Y, move it back. And let's scale these just like that. Let's look from the side, make sure you are in the X-ray view, select these and move them around. Just like this. And now again we'll add solidify modifier and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision, and this should work nicely. Okay, let's select everything, right click and shade smooth, and now we can combine them. So first of all, let's move this to the side, and now select this large petal and press Alt G to reset the location. Let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad, and we can refine the shape a little bit because this got a little bit out of hand. So let's make this more wide, and let's now press Alt D to create a link duplicate, but don't confirm. Press R and enter 60 degrees, and let's confirm with enter. And now without pressing anything, hold shift and press R a few times to duplicate this around. Now of course we'll need to modify some angles because there is some overlap happening. So let's select a few of these and let's hold period on a keyboard and switch to individual origins. And now we can press R then X twice to move them around their local X axis. Now let's turn off the X-ray view so we better see the overlaps, and let's press R then X and move this around so we get rid of these overlaps. And what we can do additionally is to tab into the edit mode, doesn't matter which one, press A to select all and G and Y twice so we move them along their Y axis away from each other, away from the middle, away from the origin point, and it should kind of relax the overlaps a little bit. And of course you can add some custom rotations if you want. Okay, I think this looks fine. So let's continue with these other ones. Let's select this one here in the middle, press Alt G to reset the location, and press S to scale it down a little bit. We can tilt it along the X axis. And now let's look from the top, press R and 30 to rotate these 30 degrees. And now press Alt D, R and 120. Let's confirm with enter and Shift R to repeat. So we now have 3 like this, and we can move them down here. And additionally, again, we can press R and X twice to move them along their local X axis. And now finally this one, press Alt G, bring it up and maybe scale it along Z axis a little bit. And again, we'll press Alt D, R and 120 and Shift R again to repeat, and we can optionally rotate it around. But all in all, this should be enough. But I don't like the shape of these bottom petals. So what we can do, let's enable X-ray view. We can select this and just extrude it towards the origin point. So press E, then Y, and Y twice, and move it like this. And of course, we can slide these around to ease up the shape a little bit. And this should cover the hole in the middle nicely. Okay, so that's the basic flower, and now we'll need these like tentacles in the middle. But before you do, make sure you have the extra objects add-on active. So go edit, preferences, add-ons, and search for extra, and you can find add mesh extra objects. Just check the box, close the preferences, and now if you press Shift A, go mesh, you can see single vert option right here, and that will enable edit mode right away. Just make sure you are in the vertex select mode. Let's look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad, and let's make sure we have our X-ray enabled, and let's just press E to extrude something like this. Now tab out, let's press Shift A again and we'll add another one, and let's do another one like this. Let's tab out and let's press Shift A again, and let's create last one. Let's extrude the shape like this using E. Okay, now we can tab out and rotate these a little bit. So for example, select this one and press R then Z and rotate. And here as well. And maybe this one a little bit. So they don't overlap so much. Maybe we can tilt this one a little bit by pressing R twice. Okay. And now we can just select them all and press Ctrl J to join them. Right click and convert to curve. Now in the curve settings, let's go find the geometry section and increase the depth a little bit. And now we can tab back into the edit mode, select the control points, the endpoints right here, and press E to extrude them and Alt S to increase their radius, and now E again and Alt S again to make it smaller. Like that. Now we can tab out. Let's reduce the resolution here and right click and convert to mesh. Now we can tab in. We can disable the X-ray view and hold Alt and select the loop. Now hold Alt and Shift and select these other and press F to fill. Now we can tab out and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision surface, right click and shade smooth. And of course we can press Alt D and R to duplicate and tilt some more of them. Just make sure they don't overlap too much. So we can again press Alt D R and move them around. If they're overlapping too much with the leaves, you can press R then X and move these leaves individually away. Just press R and then X twice and tilt them on their local X-axis. So that's the base flower model. Let's look from the camera, and while in the camera view you can lock the viewport to the camera. Just press N, and on the side here in the view options you will see camera to view, and I just right click here and add it to my quick favorites. So now if I press Q here in the viewport, I have this option right here. So I will lock the camera to view, and now with my standard viewport controls I can just move this around and find some nice angle that I really like. So for example something like this. Okay, and just make sure you deactivate this. And now I want to move some of these around because I don't like the composition that much. So let me look from the camera again and let me balance it out a little bit. Okay, something like this should be fine. Okay, so that's the modeling part, and now let's create some shaders, and this will be the fun part. So first of all, let's go to the render settings, and in the Eevee we'll enable ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections with refraction if you want this to look nice in Eevee as well. But now I'll change to cycles and switch to GPU, enable some denoising, and down here in the performance tab I will decrease the tiling to 512. And of course, I will reduce the samples to 512 as well. And now I'll press Ctrl B in the viewport to limit the view only to a camera bounce. And now we are able to do a preview. But first, let's drag here to have another window in the viewport. And let's switch this to shader editor so we can have our nodes. And let's now select one of these and let's create a new material right here. And you can see the node setup right there, and just select the principled shader. And if you have Node Wrangler active, you can just press Ctrl T, but if you don't, go edit preferences, and in the add-ons search for node and find the Node Wrangler, and again just check the box, close the preferences. And now if you select this shader right here and press Ctrl T, you will have the texture coordinate and mapping setup for the texture. We'll just replace the texture. So let's select this one, press X to delete, and let's press Shift A, and we'll add texture and gradient texture. Now let's connect the mapping and let's just preview it. And with the Node Wrangler you can just hold Ctrl and Shift and select the gradient texture. but here we'll need to switch to material preview, so hold Z and switch to material preview. And now you can see we have a gradient going from bottom to top, which is exactly what I want here. So we can just modify it. Let's press Shift A in the node editor and let's add converter and color ramp, and let's plug it right here. And we can now edit this and compress it a little bit, but I don't want to compress it too much. I would rather just move it. So we can use the mapping node right here and move the X location of this to move the gradient more towards the top. I want these to be glowing later. So let's move it like this, and this will be our mask for 2 shaders. So first of all, let's leave the principal shader here and let's press Shift A and we'll add shader, and let's add emission shader right here. And now we'll press Shift A and add a mix shader and plug it here. Just make sure you plug this into the factor. And now we can plug these shaders right here. And let's make this one darker so we can see which one is which. And this is the correct way how I wanted it. So first of all, let's enable scene lights and scene world here to have the lighting preview as well. And now for the principal shader, I will enable transmission. I will ramp it up all the way to 1 and reduce the IOR to 1.1 and use, you know, really bright color like a purple maybe. And now in the emission, we can add like 5 emission. And now let's hold Z and preview it rendered. And you will see something like this happening. And now we can start bringing down the transmission to see what it actually does when it reacts with the light. And I really like the transition there. So maybe let's not compress this too much and just move it up here a little bit more. That's quite okay. And now let's handle the petals. So first of all, we'll deal with the small ones. And this will be like a really transmissive shader. So let's enter 1.1 for the IOR and increase the transmission to like half and increase the roughness a little bit. And let's make sure we change the color to something like pink. Now let's select these and we'll create the same thing with the IOR of 1.1 and like a half of transmission, but this time we'll go like a cyan color. And now down here, let's create a new material, and here we'll use like a deeper blue color but with the same IOR of 1.1 and with half of that transmission, and we can go a little bit more with the roughness. And now let's make these look a little better. First of all, I think they could benefit from some structure, so let's tap into the edit mode and let's press Ctrl R and create a new loop cut here in the middle. And now press Ctrl B to bevel it. And we can select these 3 vertices right here in the middle and bring them up to create some structure. I think this will look really nice here, and especially when we add some lights. But now I want to go to the modifiers panel and just apply that solidify. So let's press Ctrl A here, and you will see a prompt to make object single user and just confirm. That means this petal is now disconnected from these other ones. So let's tap back into the edit mode. Go for face select by pressing 3 and alt click this loop on the side. You will see we selected everything around. And now in the materials tab, we can add new material and just hit assign. Now tab out, and we can change this from principled to emission shader and add like a 5 emission, maybe even more. You will see how nicely this translates through that transmissive material there. Let's go like cyan or even a little bit green. And now we can select these by holding shift with this one as last, and we can press Ctrl L and link object data again, so this will make it the same object once more. And now you can see this nice translucency happening there, and even here, and we can increase the transmission on those. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Tab into the edit mode and scale it up so we have some background. And let's look from the camera, and we'll need to move this down obviously tiny bit like this. And let's create a new material there, and let's go something darker like a violet. Now let's collapse this, and this will be mostly about lighting from now on. So let's press Shift A and let's add a point light, and we can move it right here and give this some power, like 150, and a little bit of color, and you will see how nicely this comes alive, especially, you know, these like tentacle things with the translucency. And additionally, we can make these leaves or petals more vibrant too by duplicating some of these point lights around. So we can, for example, move one under here, make sure it's not visible from the camera, just increase the radius a little bit, and we can give this like a orangey red color and really ramp up the power here. And with this one we could increase the radius as well, because it's too sharp, and now it's much nicer and softer in there. Okay, and let's take this one and we can duplicate it by pressing Shift D and move it here. And here we can create a light with some contrast, so for example like a cyan color. And you can see the translucency really kicking in on those petals. And for example, right now we can really go maybe a little bit higher on the transmission, and, you know, play with the color if you want. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add another area light, bring it up by pressing G then Z and make it larger, switch to disk, and let's make it really strong, like 1500, and place it towards the back like this. Let's look from the top, place it behind, and like this. And again, we can change the color a little bit. Maybe it's too strong, maybe something like 750 should be enough. And now in the world settings we can play with the brightness and color of the world as well. And of course in the render settings we can scroll down in the color management, switch this to higher contrast setting and play with the exposure, just like that. Now to make this really interesting, you can, for example, animate it, and it's very similar to the animation I've done on the tree, on that stylized tree a few weeks ago. So if you haven't watched it, go look it up. So I will go a little bit faster over this one. So let's press Shift A and I will add an empty right here in the middle, and I'll just make it larger so I can select it, and I will add another one and just move it to the side here and parent it to the middle one like this. Control P and parent. And now I will select this one in the middle, and let's modify it to something like 240, and let's switch this to 30 FPS. And I will press N for the side panel, and in the item menu I will right click and insert single keyframe on the Z rotation and just move to the frame 241 and change this to 360. Right click and insert single keyframe. And now in the timeline I will press T and choose linear interpolation. So basically this will just loop around 360 degrees, and I will use this empty as UV coordinate object for the displacement. So I will select one of the leaves, go to the modifiers panel, and let's add displacement. And I will switch direction to Z and create the new texture right here, and switch the type to clouds and increase the size to something like 2 or 3, so it's only like a wavy thing here, not too distorted. And back in the modifier settings I will reduce the strength to something like 0.5. And the key thing right now is to change the coordinates to object and pick this empty right here. So let me use the eyedropper and I will try to pick this. And now if I go to the Eevee preview and play back the animation, you can see the leaf moving. So now I will just select all of these, even these on top, and including these tentacles, and hold Shift and select this one as last and transfer this by choosing copy to select it. Now everything moves, but for these tentacles I will just go and modify this. This will not transfer, the modifiers are unlinked, so I can just switch the direction from Z to X and do this on all of these. And now if I look from the camera and play it back, we have this nice wiggle movement right here. And of course you can go on and add, for example, like particles around, you know, little dots that can be moving in a circular motion as well. You can animate the camera a little bit, a lot of things you can do here, but the purpose of this tutorial was the flower modeling and, you know, lighting and creating the shaders. And right now we'll try to make some nice render out of this. So let's go to the render tab and I will just hit F12 and wait it out. Now this looks quite nicely, but I think it misses something. So let's go to the Compositing tab and let's use nodes right here. Let me move this to the side and I will press Shift A and add filter glare node. Of course in Eevee that's taken care of by the bloom, but here in the cycles render we need to add it ourselves. So let's switch this to fog glow and I will reduce the size to 7. And again with the node wrangler we can hold Ctrl Shift and click the glare node to preview, and now you will see this looks much better with that, you know, diffuse glow around those leaves and around emissive parts mostly. So that's something I really recommend to enable. And now if you go rendering, this will now start to render with that filter in the end as well. So if you, for example, render out animation, every frame will get these compositing nodes applied to it as well. So that's it for today's tutorial, inspired by, you know, the avatar or, you know, bioluminescent natural elements. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here, please hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.